welcome to iScience Radio. I'm Simi.
And I'm Louisa. We're the radio branch of Imperial College's science magazine, iScience. We bring you the latest science news and stories from all around the globe.
Today we have some interesting pieces on relatively recent medical developments.
We'll, for example, be talking about the bird flu and HIV research.
And we've also got an interview on COVID research and some music chosen by one of our producers, Tianan. And I just wanted to, just before the show starts, give some shout outs. So I'm giving a shout out to my dad.
Okay.
He's turning, I really don't know how old he's turning, but happy
Dad
birthday
age.
to him. And then happy birthday to Gwen, who's turning 24 tomorrow.
Happy birthday, guys. Okay, so we've got a lot of stuff coming up here, but first we'll listen to some music. This is Universal Sound by Tyler Childers.
Up in Pocahontas, in the cranberry glades, ain't got bars nor the charge to call her anyways. My mind's a mile a minute, and my thoughts to bark like hounds. I focus on my breathing and the universal sound. I think about my darling girl sleeping all alone. I pray the stars will shoot her all the wishes she can hold. On the day that I return, I aim to lay her down, but right now I'm focused on the universal sound. I think about tobacco juice and mason jars of shine. I think about the vices I've let take me over time. I recall when I was a baby, I didn't need nothing around but a little bitty rattler and the universal sound. I close my eyes, it was all so clear. It was all right then, it was all right here. I focus on my breathing and the universal sound. I let it take me over from the toenails to the crown of the body that I'm in, where they put me in the ground, and I return to the chorus of the universal sound. I've been up on the mountain and I've seen his wondrous grace. I've sat there on a bar stool and I've looked him in the face. He seemed a little haggard, but it did not slow him down. He was humming to the neon of the universal sound.
So that was Universal Sound by Tyler Childers. And now we have Sophie in the studio with us for some news. So what do you have for us?
So a research group in Singapore is using robots to attach electronic backpacks onto Madagascan hissing cockroaches.
Wild.
So the backpack has a microchip in it which can communicate with external computers. So it basically means that the researchers can then control and steer the cockroaches, meaning that they're going to be potentially going to be really useful for search and rescue missions in places like collapsed buildings.
So they're kind of like robots?
Yeah, like bio-robots, which is crazy. And it's really impressive and it could be really useful, but I do feel really sorry for the cockroaches.
Yeah, me too. Do you have any other news for us?
So I do. So researchers have found that our organs don't age at the same rate. So our lungs and our kidneys go through a burst of aging in our 20s, so way before the other organs do, like the uterus, which only does that during menopause.
Oh.
So it's not the first time that this has been researched, but this is the most comprehensive research that has been done on it.
Okay, so how did they carry out this research?
Well, they analysed nearly 26,000 images of tissue slices from 29 organs, including the brain, heart and the lungs. The donors were all between 20 and 70 years old, and their tissue samples weren't physically damaged and were collected very soon after their deaths. But using the data from these donors, the researchers trained AI models to learn links between the age at their death and the features of the particular organ tissue.
So you said they found some organs aged more than the rest of the body. Do they know why?
Yeah, so they found that several organs, so including the lungs and the kidneys, age more than the rest of the body between the ages of 20 and 40. And they think it could be because people are more likely to smoke and drink alcohol during those ages.
Makes sense.
Or it could be because accelerated aging may be happening anyway, and drinking and smoking makes it worse. They also found that the heart ages more rapidly than the rest of the body during our 30s, and then again from the ages about 45 to 55, whereas the brain, muscles and skin all seem to age faster in our 30s and our 60s, but they have no idea why. So even though we don't understand everything, these results are really helping researchers' ability to measure the aging process.
That is really cool. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing that with us.
No problem, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now we have some more music. This is The Seed by Aurora.
I don't know where to go. Through dirt and shadow I grow. I'm reaching light through the struggle. Just like the seed, I'm chasing the wonder. I unravel myself, all in slow motion. Suffocate me, so my tears can be rain. I will water the ground where I stand, so the flowers can grow back again. 'Cause just like the seed, everything wants to land. We are burning our fingers, but we learn and forget.
So now we have Ollie joining us in the studio to talk about World's AIDS Day.
Hello. Yes. So we're a little bit late, but yesterday on the 1st of September, 1st September is World AIDS Day. It's a global movement that was started in 1988 to raise awareness and stand in solidarity against HIV stigma, as well as a day to commemorate the lives of the people who've lost their lives to AIDS-related illnesses over the years. Globally, there's estimated to be 39 million people still living with HIV at the moment, and that's pretty much the same amount of people who've died of HIV and AIDS-related illnesses over the past 40 years. It's estimated to be around 40 million.
Okay, so can you let listeners, I forgot the medium I was on, listeners know a little bit more about the HIV virus, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So HIV stands for the Human Immunodeficiency Virus. It's a retrovirus, which basically just means that it has RNA in it as opposed to DNA. And it affects the immune system, specifically T cells. And T cells are like the sort of the army of your immune system, effectively. It's their job to track down and attack pathogens. So obviously the fact that this virus infects those cells, it massively damages your immune system. It's spread through blood, semen, vaginal fluid, anal mucus and breast milk. And if untreated, HIV essentially, like I mentioned, it depletes your immune system to a point where you can no longer fight infections, and at that point it develops into AIDS, which is acquired immune deficiency syndrome, meaning that you're susceptible to all kinds of opportunistic infections which a healthy individual would normally be able to fight off. So one of the ways that they first discovered AIDS as a problem where people were coming in and they were dying of cat flu, which is obviously something that normally most humans don't even get infected with. And suddenly they had people getting really sick from it, and they were like, there must be something else here, and that's when they realized there was something else going on.
Yeah, crazy. I mean, I've never heard of cat flu, even. That shows that
it's
not really a thing. I know that in the past, so like the 80s when HIV/AIDS was first emerging, that there was no treatment, but there have been some major developments since then, right? Absolutely,
yeah. So it was seen and still is by many because of a lack of awareness and a lack of sort of education around HIV and AIDS research. It was seen as a death sentence. Essentially, if you contracted the virus, that was kind of it, and that there was a massive stigma around it, also associated with the fact that HIV was very prominent within the gay community, and so a whole generation of gay men in the 80s really it massively devastated that whole generation. But since then, we've had some major developments in research. So antiretroviral drugs, or ARTs, first developed in the late 90s, basically reduce a person's viral load, which we all remember hearing a lot about when we were talking about COVID, the amount of the virus that's in your cells. And ARTs are able to reduce the viral load to an undetectable level. And when the viral load is undetectable, that means it's untransmissible. And that's a sort of a big slogan with it. Undetectable means untransmissible. It means that if you have a viral load that is undetectable, you can't pass on the virus, and you can live effectively a normal life as long as you keep taking this medication. It doesn't affect your life expectancy, so people with HIV can now effectively live as
pretty
long
normal life then.
Yeah, obviously you're having to continue to take these drugs, and there are certain health things you need to be aware of, but effectively. And then in more recent times, so I think in 2012 it was around then, the development of PEP and PrEP, which are antiretrovirals that prevent the infection from taking hold in place, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the interview I have with Jose later.
So these are honestly great developments, but it's just a thing of, are these treatments widely available?
Yeah, so this is one of the big issues. There is a major disparity and inequality in access to these medications, and obviously with AIDS and HIV being a massive issue, not just in predominantly in developing countries as well. It's a massive issue in sub-Saharan Africa. Access to these medications there's not equity in that department. So World AIDS Day's campaign this year is focusing on rights and improving equity with the aim of ending AIDS as a public health threat by 2030. The idea is that basically if we stop transmission, if we get these drugs to be widely available, that everyone has access to them, then in theory we can stop this virus from being a public health threat by 2030 is the aim.
Wow, that's like some real progress that has been made, but I feel like there's still a long way to go till 2030. We will be hearing more about that in your interview with Jose, who is researching new ways to treat and cure HIV. But we got some more music, right?
Yeah, in the meantime, we've got this is I think Austin by Zach Bryan. This is from Austin.
There is concrete below me and a sky above so blue. I'm finally leaving Austin and I wish it was with you. I am just a sickness and you seem to be the cure. How much can a southern girl honestly endure? Remember Northwest mountains, they were snow-capped in June. You were napping on my arms on a Sunday afternoon. But babe, I've gotta heal myself from the things I've never felt. Repression is my heaven, but I'd rather go through hell. It's about time that I left Austin, about time you settled down with a man who doesn't move as quick as train rolling through town. About time that I faced the hard times I've let go. Love was just an ocean I would drown before I flow. You remember getting drunk on the outskirts of this town when I gave you all I had, but it still let you down. Everyone I've ever loved has either left or died. Wish I was born with concrete shoes, but I'm leaving tonight. It's about time that I left Austin, about time you settled down with a man who doesn't move as quick as a train's rolling through the town. About time that I face the hard times I've let go. Love was just an ocean I would drown before I flow. There's concrete below me and a sky above so blue. People ruin people, I don't wanna ruin you. I'm just a sickness and you seem to be the cure. How much can a southern girl honestly endure? And I'm finally gone from Austin, you finally settled down with a man who didn't move as quick as the trains roll through town. I finally had to face the hard times I've let go. Loving you's an ocean I'd have drowned so you could float.
So that was From Austin by Zach Bryan, and we're still joined by Ollie.
So, Ollie, you mentioned that you did an interview last week that you're going to play for us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we should just get straight into it.
Yeah, great. Let's play it.
My name is Jose Moran, and I am a current PhD candidate at the University of California in Irvine. And my research particularly looks at HIV latency and persistence and trying to find more accessible cure approaches.
Okay, cool. So what exactly does that entail?
Yeah, so kind of a big major hurdle of HIV research essentially is that HIV is a retrovirus, which means that it converts its viral RNA into DNA and then integrates it into host genome, so into host cells. And sometimes it doesn't complete the full life cycle of HIV, so it'll stop after it's integrated, which means that the immune system can't recognize that it's an infected cell. So, and even if someone is on, for example, antiretroviral therapy or ART, which is the current standard treatment for HIV, even if they are on ART, if they ever get off of it, even decades later, that latently infected cell now can become reactivated and start spreading HIV. So what we're trying to do is find a way to make that latent reservoir, is what we call it, but essentially it's just groups of cells throughout the body that are infected with HIV, and we're trying to find a way to get those to shrink, essentially by removing those cells.
So as opposed to the current options, which is treatment of HIV and suppressing the viral load so you can't spread it, you're actually looking at more of a cure as opposed to a treatment.
Yeah, so it's eliminating it. So a lot of the current treatments now stop viral spread, but it doesn't actually remove these latently infected cells. And especially since there's some issues with adherence and accessibility of these compounds. Specifically, a big area in the world is in actually sub-Saharan Africa, where maybe they don't have as much access to these compounds. Maybe it's a pricing issue, or there's also a lot of social factors. People maybe don't want to get tested because once that's confirmed, they might see it as, being a social pariah for some cases. So it's a lot about just trying to find ways that will make it so that there's an actual cure, a one-time cure, or working towards that end as opposed to just only treatment. Because even with the compounds that I'm developing, so I work more in drug development, um, it's essentially working, you're still going to be on ART during that treatment. That's what we would hypothetically be doing. There's been a big push towards people getting tested, which is very great for public health reasons. However, there's still that stigma of HIV still exists. There's a lot of interesting things in the field regarding to that. So with the development of PrEP, at least in the US, that happened, it was FDA approved, I believe, in 2012. So it's almost been a decade now where a lot of people are on PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis. There's also PEP. So we have that prescribed in the lab. So it's post-exposure prophylaxis. Since I work with humanized mice with HIV research, that's part of the pipeline that we work with. So if, for example, so these are HIV infected animals. So if I were to get exposed to that, then I could be quickly, I already have an ongoing prescription that's already there. So I would just essentially take it immediately afterwards and fulfill that 28-day, I believe it's 28-day course of treatment, and then I would be set. But I think with that, it's the main issue. Also, there were over 1 million cases, new cases within the last year. There's 39 million people currently living with HIV that are alive, and also that's almost the same amount of people who have passed away of AIDS-related illnesses. So that's about roughly an estimated of 40 million people worldwide. So it's still important. There's still spread. It's lesser than beforehand. I think with the development of PrEP and PEP, um, kind of the fire to further research more quickly kind of did slow down a little bit, but there's still a present need for the development of these new treatments. Another, I don't know if you know, there's been a handful of people who have been cured of HIV, but these are not accessible ways for a cure. That's maybe 10 cases now. There's about one or two now every year coming out of the 39 million people. So that's kind
Yeah,
of
it's a
what
drop in the ocean,
exactly.
really, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's kind of what we're trying to approach it in a more different, accessible way. So we're trying to while someone is on ART, try to awaken some of these latently infected cells so that the immune system is still able to, you're preventing viral spread. So there's no new infection of cells that are being infected, but also now you have this immune system now that is able to handle a small amount of cells that are kind of over time being activated. And the hope is that you shrink the reservoir enough that if you were to be off of ART, then your immune system can actually handle that small amount. So that's kind of what we're working towards, that goal.
Okay, that's amazing. So you're essentially like training the immune system to be able to handle these small doses. Mm-hmm. So while people are on this ART medication, so that when they get off, number one, there isn't a large amount still knocking around inside their cells, but also that they are used to managing those small amounts.
Yeah, so the approach for this is there's a few like other names for it, but it's the kick and kill, induce and reduce, or the activation elimination approach. Essentially is you're kicking these cells to be awakened, you start producing virus again, so that way your immune system is really good at handling HIV. It's just that when you're doing it for a decade, your immune system essentially tires out. It's not able to produce the same amount of T cells to battle the infection, and that's when you get the progression to AIDS. So it's like a two-pronged approach. One is to kick them, activate them, so they are able to be recognized. And then the kill arm is essentially where you now have either, you have your own immune cells or cytopathic effects from the cell. So the cell now maybe is also realizing, oh, I am infected with something. Let me remove myself from the immune system. So sometimes they will, essentially kill themselves if other immune cells haven't already tried to kill them. Or there's also ways you can develop like genetic approaches, CAR T cells. You can modify these cells to go in and now be extra primed to identify these latently infected cells that are now activated.
Okay, so sort of like modifying T cells, these sort of the attack squad of your immune system, and sort of training them to specifically find these latent cells that have got this HIV sort of dormant inside them.
Yeah, but again, the immune system can't identify them if they are dormant, because when they are dormant,
so you've got to wake them up first.
Yes, yeah. So that's the step one, and then the step two. So there's two different arms that are being developed. So I specifically am working on drug development. So it's looking for these latency reversing agents. We call them LRAs. Specifically, my project is looking at protein kinase C modulators. So that's part of one of the subclasses of LRAs that are currently being explored. And then we have another person in my lab who's exploring the kill arm, which is a different project.
Okay. So your job is wake the cells up, get them going, and then the rest of your lab is working on how to kill them once you've sort of awoken the sleeping dragon, as it were. Okay, that's so cool. And so I suppose you already sort of mentioned it. The end goal for this research, what would that be?
So I think if we find or we're able to develop a compound that worked, at least for my project, would be something that is tolerated, that can activate T cells, but specifically those that are infected. So you want something that is very potent in terms of latency reversing ability without being toxic, right? And essentially, if you could do it in one dose, that would be lovely. Where you could just activate all these cells while you're still on ART. So that's something that's going to be consistent throughout this whole treatment. Would be while on ART, you would activate them. So there's no expansion of the latent reservoir or more infected cells, but your body would be able to clear it through many of those other kill approaches there. And essentially, either you would then have your latent reservoir so small that if you were ever to be off of ART, your immune system can handle anything left over. And then essentially you wouldn't have any HIV essentially present, active HIV present in your body.
So yeah, so that was Jose Moran talking there about his research into he's a part of with looking at treatments and potentially a sort of cure effectively for HIV infection. And sort of to summarize really, what we're talking about is the latent HIV that sort of hangs around in your cells but isn't active while you're on these amazing ART drugs that suppress your viral load, so you're undetectable, you're untransmissible, you're living a relatively normal life. But if you're ever to come off those drugs, these latent cells might spring back up again. So rather than basically having you to take those your whole life, these drugs would enable you to take the course of these drugs while also staying on the ART, get rid of that reservoir of dormant HIV cells, and effectively get rid of any remaining HIV infection in the body, and then essentially a cure. And the reason this is so sort of improving access and stuff like that, as opposed to ideas about the other cures that have been presented for HIV are very case specific. You have to have a specific kind of cancer that's associated with AIDS, and effectively all of your blood cells have to have been depleted anyway, and then you can have a total blood transfusion, and then we're able to actually cure HIV, which is what we kind of briefly talked about there. But there's a few cases, maybe a year. It's not really accessible, whereas this is something that could potentially, like we were mentioning with the World AIDS Day aims this year, this is a treatment that could potentially go towards getting us to that 2030 goal.
Wow. Okay, that's really, really interesting, and I'm looking forward to probably hearing more about that in the future as the research goes on. Thank you for that, Ollie.
Yeah, so I feel like it's not really discussed as much. It's not as much of a topic, even though it's definitely something that is still affecting such a big group of people. So I think it's really interesting and also important to hear about current research.
Yeah, definitely. We have some more current research coming up, but first, more music. Here is Labor by Paris Paloma.
Why are you hanging on so tight to the rope that I'm hanging from? this island. This was an escape plan. Carefully timed it, so let me go and dive into the waves below. Who tends the orchards? Who fixes up the gables? Emotional torture from the high table. Who fetches the water from the Rocky Mountain spring and walk back down again to feel your words and their sharp sting? And I'm getting fucking tired. The capillaries in my eyes are bursting. If all love died, would that be the worst thing? For somebody I thought was my savior, sure maybe do a whole lot of labor. The kind of skin on my hands is cracking. If our love ends, would that be a bad thing? And the silence haunts our bedchamber. You make me do too much labor. Apologies for my tongue. Never used. Busy lapping from flowing cup and stabbing with your fork. I know you're a smart man. And weaponized the false incompetence. It's dominance under a guy. If we had a daughter, I'd watch and could not save her. The emotional torture from the head of your high table. She'd do what you taught her. She'd meet the same cruel fate. So now I've gotta run so I can undo this mistake. At least I've gotta try. The capillaries in my eyes are bursting. If our love died, would that be the worst thing? For somebody I thought was my savior, sure make it do a whole lot of labor. The callous skin on my hands is cracking. If our love ends, would that be a bad thing? And the silence haunts our bedchamber. You make me do too much labor. All day, every day, therapist, mother maid, nymph, then a virgin, nurse, then a servant, just an appendage, live to attend him so that he never lifts a finger. 24/7 baby machine, so he can live out his picket fence dreams. It's not an act of love if you make her. You make me do too much labor. All day, every day, therapist, mother maid, nymph, then a virgin, nurse, then a servant, just an appendage, live to attend him so that he never lifts a finger. 24/7 baby machine, so he can live out his picket fence dreams. It's not an act of love if you make her. You make me do too much labor. The days in your eyes are bursting. If I love her, then it's bursting. Just an idea, live to a savior, sure that he never a whole lot of labor. 24/7 baby machine, so he can live out and his picket fence dreaming. It's not a act of love, so you shake her. You make me do too much labor.
So that was Labour by Paris Paloma. We're about halfway through our show. But
Yeah, I've been enjoying the music very much today. How about you?
Shout out to Tiernan.
Shout out to Tiernan.
He's doing very well. We still have plenty of exciting stuff coming up.
Yes, so we will actually be talking to Tiernan about the bird flu. And Simi, you will tell us a little bit about the polio vaccine, right?
I do have something to tell you, but that's going to happen after our next song, which is Online by TWRP.
TWRP, yes.
Montaigne and Tom Gardy. I'm sure Louisa will say better when we get back from the song.
Baby, I try to meet your eye, but those eyes weren't made for me. I ask around, 'cause the night has just begun. You're such a mystery. Red glasses, I like 'em a lot, and your banner earrings are getting me hot. There is a certain time and place for love, and I'm starting to think that I know what you want. I think I know what you like, so farewell and goodbye. You can catch me later, baby. Can catch me online. I'll see you online. You can catch me in cyberspace. I'll be the one with the one that you place. I'll see you display. Oh baby, when I pass you by, I'm just another guy, asking myself why do I try?
Boy, why are we so coy out here in reality when we both done virtually? I start feeling myself, you make me feel 20 feet tall here in our world. Never knew that I could feel this way, never knew that you would feel the same. And the feeling's here to stay from now until I decay.
And even then you know I'll wait. You know I'll wait. I'll see you alright. Catch me in cyberspace. Girl, I miss your interface. I'll see you alright. It's like there's nobody but you and me online. I'll see you alright. Catch me in cyberspace. I'll see you alright.
We're young and we're free, just you and me online, online, just you and me, just you and me
And that was Online by TWRP and Montaigne and Tom Cardy, I think. Yes, did I say
indeed,
that right?
that's the
Perfect.
ones. I love those
As you
ones.
can hear, we're back with Tiernan, who has joined us to talk about something that he thinks you might find a bit unsettling.
Yeah. I'm not here with great news. It's interesting, but it might not go down a very happy-go-lucky sort of. Okay, we'll get into it a little bit. You're gonna stay with me. We're gonna be talking a little bit about the H5N1 virus.
What is that?
It's a very good question. So H5N1 is a strain of avian flu, so bird flu, as you probably have heard it. It's an infectious type of influenza that spreads among birds.
Okay, so why are people getting worried?
Well, the number of human cases of bird flu are on the rise. And what is most worrying is that an article in MIT Tech Review recently that came out, that the virus had began to appear in cows and dairy products. So far, there's been 55 cases of H5N1 bird flu that have been reported in the US. And according to the US Center for Disease Control, Prevention, sorry, the
It's a mouthful.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's the
Prevention,
CDC,
protection, I know what you're
as it's
talking about.
a lot easier known. About 29 of those cases have been detected in California, and almost all of those cases, the infected person is thought to have caught the virus from a cattle or poultry on the farms.
Oh, wow. So what's like the outcome for animals who have contracted the disease?
So the virus is especially lethal to the bird populations, and it has been wiping out poultry populations and seabird populations over the last couple of years. It's caused fatal infections in mammals who have come into contact with those birds. Seema Lakdawala, a virologist at Emory University School of Medicine in Atlanta, Georgia, suggested the virus made a leap into cattle, probably from birds, only the once, and it's been spreading through the herds since that transition.
Gosh, I mean, it only needs to jump one time, doesn't it?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
what is being done? What's being done?
Yeah, how are we controlling it? So a big worry at the moment is virologists do not want the virus to make its way into pigs. Pigs are notorious viral incubators. Brinkley Bellotti, an infectious disease epidemiologist at Wake Forest Uni in North Carolina, said that they can become infected with swine strains, bird strains, and human strains. So they can be affected by multiple different strains. And whenever you have one host that gets infected with multiple strains at the same time, the strains can swap genes, and then that can cause recombination, and then in turn that gives rise to new, potentially more infectious, potentially more harmful strains that then
So
can
inside some of these like animals, they're literally creating new strains.
Yeah,
of-
exactly.
Like new
So it's almost
mutations, new viruses.
exactly
Okay,
right.
okay.
So making its way into a pig, you'll have multiple different strains of this influenza virus recombine into what can then become more transmissible for human population, and it might end up being a little bit more deadly or a little bit more harmful.
What? So we like just try to keep it away from pigs, or what?
I mean, it's quite hard to just keep it away from one type of animal. There are other initiatives that governments are taking to try and limit the spread of this up-and-coming disease. Practices such as in the UK here, the idea in agriculture, so free-range chickens, you might normally remember those as just, chickens that are able to walk outside, walk around, happy. Like an example is the Happy Farm Egg Company. Like the free roam chickens that allow to make their way around. But they've instituted legislation that means that you kind of have to keep free range chickens indoors to make sure that you limit the spread of aviation flu from populations.
Arrange.
yeah, exactly. So they're not so much free range, and they've changed the packaging from saying free range eggs to things like barn raised eggs, because you don't have, there still are better quality on average than what would have been battery hens, but it's still not the usual sort of free range roaming that you would have seen in those cases.
Yeah,
but I'll be honest, it does sound concerning, but I am a bit of a worrier, so I'm just like, should I actually be worried, or is it? I mean, it's still scary either way.
It is scary, and I'm not to be whatever, but the media love to get a little bit of a story out of a potential new pandemic, an emerging pandemic. But there are a few hurdles that the disease has to pass before, like, we even get to that stage. Okay. There's a couple of things that need to happen first.
Okay, I hope they never happen.
Yeah, I mean, like, for example, we already have vaccinations for the disease. We have them now. So unlike in, for example, the COVID pandemic, whenever vaccines were only beginning to be researched and developed as the pandemic happened and continued forward, America has stockpiled and amassed vaccinations to limit the spread of the disease. And that is one of the biggest traits that we have that can sort of make sure that it doesn't get as big as it possibly could. So whilst, yes, it is a little bit, how would you say, it is something to keep an eye on.
Keep in the back of our
exactly minds. The case numbers in human populations are rising. The mechanism by which how these humans in some cases have been infected is not known.
I don't think they're going to tell us.
We might not know. We might not know for quite a while, depending on what research comes out. But it is something that is definitely to keep an eye on and make sure that it gets monitored, so that we don't end up in a situation where we have something like another pandemic.
I don't think we need another pandemic.
I don't think we do either. I had gone through one of them, and I think that's enough.
I think that's more than enough. Okay, well, thank you for telling us that and then letting us not get too worried. So
yeah, of course.
Thank you so much. So,
since you picked the music today,
oh yes,
would you maybe like to announce our next song?
I would love to announce the next song. Okay, so this new song, the one that was about to play, is a sea shanty. It's one of my favorite sea shanties of all time.
I'm so excited.
This is Shawnee Town by The Longest Johns.
Sun rose up, Bowie floats down, way down the Ohio to Shawnee Town, and it's hot on the beach, or she moves too slow, way down to Shawnee Town on the Ohio. Whiskey's in the jug, boys, and wheat's in the sack. Hey! We'll trade 'em down to Shawnee Town, and we'll bring the rocks all back. And it's hot on the beach, or she moves too slow, way down to Shawnee Town on the Ohio. Oh, them good old boys, they talk so loud and long. They're white as a barrel and they're twice as strong. And it's hard on the beach, or she moves too slow, way down to Shawnee Town on the Ohio. The water's mighty warm, boys, the air is cold and dank, and the cursed fog, it gets so thick that you cannot see the bank. And it's hard on the beach, or she moves too slow, way down to Shawnee Town on the Ohio. Now the current's got her, and we'll take up the slack. We'll sail her down to Shawnee Town, and we'll bushwhack her back. And it's hard on the beach, or she moves too slow, way down to Shawnee Town on the Ohio. Sun rose up, but we floats down, way down the Ohio to Shawnee Town. And it's hot on the beach, or she moves too slow, way down to Shawnee Town on the Ohio. And it's hot on the beach, or she moves too slow, way down to Shawnee Town on the Ohio, way down to Shawnee Town on the Ohio.
I gotta say, I don't usually listen to sea shanties, do you?
I love them.
You love them? Do you listen
No,
to
well,
them a
I
lot?
don't feel like I listen to enough to say. I feel like I have this thing that I do in my life where I'm just like, I really love something, but I don't listen to enough of it to say that. Like, how many sea shanties do you have to listen to before you become like a fan of a sea shanty?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know either, but you have prepared something for today to talk about the polio vaccine, right?
Yeah, I wanted to just kind of jump in. So it's a bit, kind of bring us back down to earth. So just kind of around the world, many medical systems right now are under strain. Like we know, for example, personally NHS, but particularly in regions of conflict. So we're kind of going to put a spotlight on the urgent and really hopeful initiative in the Gaza Strip. And this is an area that's been subject to so many struggles recently, as you all know. Mm-hmm. So recently, the World Health Organization, just butchered that a bit, launched a third round of polio vaccination campaign in Gaza after unfortunately being unsuccessful with their previous effort after a successful first phase. So some of these factors were lack of access, mass evacuation orders, and bombardment. So this kind of made it impossible for families to safely bring their children for vaccinations.
Okay, so I thought polio was a disease that's close to being eradicated.
Yeah, and certain strains have already been eradicated. Most recently, the wild poliovirus type 3, that was eradicated in 2020. Mm-hmm. It remains endemic only in Pakistan and Afghanistan currently, but the key to eradication is basically vaccinating children, that's what stops polio from spreading.
Yeah. This is the third effort. You mentioned the second one. Was the first phase successful?
Yes, the first phase was actually really successful. So I think over 187,000 children under 10 years of age were vaccinated in this phase. But that's just the first jab, because you need at least 2 doses for 90% protection and then 3 for 99%. So the original goal of the second phase was to reach 119,000 children under the age of 10 in northern Gaza with the second dose of the oral polio vaccine.
How will this attempt be different, or do the same risk remain and stuff?
So, sorry, my voice is a little bit, sorry.
You can take a sip of water if you want.
A humanitarian pause has been secured, but the area covered by this pause has been really reduced. Mm-hmm. So it means it's only limited to Gaza City. So that's seen an influx of at least 100,000 evacuees, so a lot of people from northern Gaza. And it means children in towns like Jabalia won't have access. Yeah. And this is an issue because 90% of children need to be vaccinated basically to stop transmission. And I guess the security situation is something I obviously have to address.
Yeah, obviously.
So with the constant population displacement, they've developed robust micro plans. So these include 216 vaccination teams across 106 fixed sites, and 22 of these have been newly added to accommodate the displaced population. In addition to that, 209 social mobilizers are working basically to raise community awareness and then encourage the families to vaccinate their children, essentially.
What other efforts are being put in?
So on top of that humanitarian pause, English, that I just mentioned, to maximize the opportunity, it's been extended by 2 hours daily, so from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. And alongside the polio vaccine, they're being given vitamin A because it actually boosts your overall immunity, especially in children aged 2 to 10. And these efforts are building on the success of the earlier phase that I mentioned. So in central and southern Gaza, the first 2 phases of this second vaccination round reached 96% of the target again, so really successful. And over 451,000 children vaccinated, and more than 364,000 reaching vitamin A.
Well, that's a really amazing effort they're making, and it's hopefully making an impact on such a large conflict, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I feel like their resilience in this time is just so extraordinary. That's why I feel like it's important to put a spotlight on it. The healthcare workers in Gaza are basically risking their safety just to reach as many children as they can. It kind of is a reminder of the lengths that we can go to protect life when the stakes are highest. And it just reflects, highlights how conflict amplifies public health risks. It's something we don't always think about. It disrupts routine care, it blocks access to preventative measure, and it turns really manageable threats into full-blown crises.
It also feels like kind of a call to action of like how we should support global health organizations that work in these conditions and advocate for like stronger humanitarian protection to ensure healthcare delivery even in those conflict zones.
100%. I feel like the campaign shows that even in crisis, the drive to protect others, especially the most vulnerable in our society, will always kind of prevail.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's idealistic to hope for less of crisis, but I think we can continue to hope to see efforts like this during times of crisis.
Yeah, that's a really hopeful message you just put out there. Thank you so much for doing that research. We're going to play another song now. This is Winter Hat by Defo.
Kill a tree and force it through the door. Feed it faucet water from the floor. Don't know how else to take care of it. Can hardly help myself without wanting to quit. Ooh, it's the kid in you, the one that never grew, the wonders overdue. Why you can't help being sad, dressed up for combat in your winter hat. Made myself a friend out in the snow. Talked to him until I had to go. Prayed he'd last throughout the silent night. I've never been so eager to feel the cold bite. Ooh, it's the kid in you, the one that never grew, the wonders overdue. Why you can't help being sad, dressed up for combat in your winter hat. And as the sun comes melting, there's nothing I can do, 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 there's nothing I can do. It's the kid and I can do, the one that never grew, nothing wonders overdue, nothing I can do, nothing I can do. You can't help being sad, nothing dressed up for combat, nothing I can do in your winter hat. Nothing I can do, there's nothing it's the kid, nothing I can do, the one that never grew, the wonders overdue, there's nothing I can do, there's nothing I can do, can't help being sad, I can do, there's nothing I can do, there's nothing I can do, winter hat.
So that was Winter Hat by Defo, and we are already at the end of our show. Unfortunately, a segment that we've been teasing is going to have to be pushed till next week. We're going to be talking to Sydney about her work researching COVID during the COVID-19 pandemic.
I'm so excited to actually hear about this. I feel like she has such good stories.
Yeah, we've already talked a little bit about it. It's a really interesting story about how sometimes research and policy making and everything like come and play with each other, and how that all affects one another. So it's a really interesting story, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what she has to tell us about her experience. Yes, but that is kind of all we have today.
Yeah, I feel like we've just spoken so much. It's just flew by completely. We've just been talking. But
talking.
I feel like I've really enjoyed this
Yeah, Sydney, Simi, what has been your favorite song today? Do you have
My favorite
one?
song today? I mean, it's got to be Aurora. Like, I
Yeah?
love her so much. I really like The Seed as well. I feel like it kind of ties in just with the humanitarian stuff as well. She's very, connected to the earth, I feel like.
Yeah, she's a really good artist. I really enjoyed Labor. I really like that one as well. Yeah, we were all feeling that here in the studio.
I feel like we were jamming to all. I feel like there's just consistently good picks. I feel a lot of pressure for when I'm going to have to choose the music, because if it's bad, I'm just going to be so ashamed.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that's all we're going to be talking about today. So again, thank you to everyone who contributed. So thank you so much for the news from Sophie, the little interview, not the little interviews, the big interview we had from Ollie. And thank you to you as well for your polio piece. That was very interesting.
Thank you for being the most amazing host in the world. Presenter. Amazing.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to Tuna for the music. And yeah, that was all today. We'll be hearing you again next week at the same time. I've been Luisa.
And I've been Simi.
And this has been iScience
Radio. Bye.